Well, hello and welcome to Material Musings. So today we are looking at the first project where we're going to be doing some wax resist. So I will go through some of the supplies. So it's just a demonstration and we're gonna have fun doing it. I'm live in the chat, so if you're watching this when it premieres, then I'll be live in the chat. But if you have any questions, then leave them in the description, in the comment section. Okay, so I've just got a couple of, it's just like white cotton. It's very thin. It's fairly thin. I'm not saying that you need to get one that is thin. This is just from a curtain liner. I repurpose, reuse. So had an old curtain. This was the liner, and so I've cut it up so that I can make my own fabric, paint, and all of this kind of lovely stuff. So you just need a small piece because you just want to experiment. If this is your first time, then you want to, you know, just take it slowly and then see how you get on with it. So this is 6 inches by 7.5, yeah? So I've got two pieces, so we can just do two designs. Yeah. So you don't have to go anywhere and download anything. You can copy the pattern that I do, or come up with your own. I want to keep it very simple, so that simple in the sense, you know, just straightforward, so that you can get the technique rather than having to worry about, well, how do I draw this and all of that. You can, you know, look at some of the patterns that you see around you and do some of those as time goes on. Okay, as you get the technique. Okay, so let me show you what you're gonna need. So I've got this little oil burner. I call it an oil burner. You put the oil in there and you've got the tea light. And that's really what I use to melt my wax. Sometimes if I'm wanting to use different colours and I want to keep it separate, then I might get one of those foil cake cases and put it in there. Or I might also get another tea light and I will show you, so that this bit doesn't get dirty. It's dirty at the moment, it's a bit dusty, so I don't want that transferred onto my fabric. So what I'm going to do is get a tea light, I'll show you, and that's how I will melt the wax in mine. Okay, so I'll show you some of the waxes. So I've in the past just used candles, you know, or the paraffin from the tea light itself, but I prefer to use a proper the candle wax, and this is technically what you would use if you were doing batik. Now again, if this is your first time, then I just use a brush. So you can use, there's a particular tool, I thought I had it to hand, that if you were doing batik, that's what you would use. But it's evaded me at the moment. Okay, so I just have the same brush, use the same brush all the time. It will go hard, but when it gets, when you start putting the candle wax on there, it will soften up and you can do any design. And here's the little kind of container I was telling you about, and that can fit on there, and the tea light is strong enough, it gets hot enough to be able to melt the wax. Okay, so that's the brush. So here's just some wax. This is crayon that I've used. I went and got a whole bag of crayons, or I've had them for years, and these melt and you can then use them. You can melt these, use them, and I use these in these things if I want to keep the colours separate. These colours, some of them transfer, but you don't get, like, you know, I'm not going to get these kind of colours on the fabric if you're thinking, oh, let me use these to colour the fabric. Okay, so that's that, but I'm just going to use candle wax, I had an old candle, I think I got it at the thrift store, and I've just broken it up. And I'm going to melt that. That's what I'm going to melt. So yeah, I've got 2 dedicated brushes. That's the only thing they're used for. And in between use, they go hard. So I've got 2 different sizes here. But it depends what kind of pattern you're going to do. With the... Is that it there? Oh, here it is. So this is the tool if you're doing batik, and you would put the wax in there, and then you could do some really nice fine lines. But that thing, you need to have the wax at a certain temperature so that it stays warm. So for these purposes, or for the ones that I've done, I've just used a brush. I did buy this because it was just like, I am going to get into this, and so I haven't yet used it because I don't have the wax bath to keep it wet, to keep it what do you call it, to keep it hot. Okay, so let me get the tea light, and here is what would have had a tea light in, and that's what I use. I just put it on here, and I'm just going to get some of the wax. I need my knife just to cut it up. Just be careful. And I'm just going to cut this up, and then I'm going to light the tea light and get it melted. So if you cut it up smaller, it'll just melt a lot quicker. And it'll take just a few minutes to melt. And in the meantime, you could think about what kind of design or pattern you want. So I'm going to just get a pencil, and I just like doing abstract designs. Think about your favorite shape. Think about the fact that you're going to potentially stitch it or paint it and then stitch it, which we will look at next week. So I'm just going to do like a circle, take up some of the space on this one. So I'm just lightly doing it in pencil. It's not one of those pencils that can erase once heated. So I'm just going to do it really lightly, and you can just barely see it. So think about some shapes that you like. So I'm going to start off with a circle, and then I'm going to do another circle in the center, and then I'm going to do a line straight across the middle. I will show you. There, 2 lines straight across the middle. You can just about see it there. Okay, there you go. Yeah? And then I'm going to leave it at that, and if I feel like doing anything else once the wax has melted, and I'm like, oh, you know, let me add some circles or dots or whatever, I can. So as I say, just keep it pretty straightforward as your first time, because you know, you just need to get the techniques, which is again straightforward. You just need to get the techniques together, and then you'll be fine. Right, so I've got a selection. I've got some fabric paint here, but you need to water it down quite a bit because it's fairly thick, and you know, you're painting the fabric. We've not treated the fabric at all. It's just going to be just as is. The other thing I use are inks. So this is just like a printer, an old printer ink. And I had loads of them because I used to refill my old printer. But then the printer broke and the technology moved on, but I said, oh, I'll be able to use them for something. And then I've got these distress stains. So I'm not going to be rewashing these, so I don't know. I can't tell you whether they're whether they will. It says for porous surfaces, for papers, fluid dye for papers and porous surfaces. So you can do it on the fabric. I don't know whether you. I mean, have you ever used them on fabric before? I don't really use these. I use these, you know, I've had them for years, and they're still, some of them are still quite full. So I'll use those. I'll use inks, I'll use fabric paints. If you're going to use acrylics, you could even watercolor, you know, you can add some watercolor. So maybe what we'll do is, for this particular one, I will use the stains and some of the inks and see how I get on. And for the other one, I will use watercolor acrylics and this fabric paint on there. Okay. Right. So some of it's melted, some of it's still waiting to melt. So all you're going to do is draw around your figure. Draw around using your brush. I'm just going to add my brush in there and allow it to sit in there just for a minute so that it can get soft. And as the wax is melting, it's yeah, so it's made it soft. So now this is as good as new. So all I'm going to do is go around the lines with my brush. So I'll do the circle first. Just try and be careful that you want it to go on the lines as opposed to everywhere else. And you just keep going. And you might want to go a second time round. So that's the inner circle, and then we'll do the outer circle. So what you need to do is definitely practice with the different types of waxes, because I found that paraffin wax, you can get capsules, and they can sometimes absorb straight through the fabric a lot quicker than the candle wax. It will cool down and go hard before it kind of absorbs into the fabric, unless you add quite a lot. So you want it to get that batik effect, you would want it to kind of soak in at least into, and then you'll see, you know, some of the has it soaking in through the back. But yeah, just you can, you know, add another layer of the wax and just go round it again. And I'm going to do the lines. So where the lines have joined each other, that's like another section, and I could potentially, you know, do this in different colours, and where the wax is, you're not going to see any colour. Where the wax is, it will retain the colour of the fabric. And you can see around the brush itself where it's cooled down. There we go. Okay. And so that's the first one. Now, what I like doing is doing all the waxing and then doing all the wax application and then adding the colour. So think about anything else you might want to add in terms of whether it's lines or patterns or that you can add to the piece. So I'm just going to do some lines here. And maybe some like small circles. Okay, so done the first one, just lightly lift it up. Okay, and you can see where it's come through the back, but essentially that's all you want. So let us do another one so you can practice another one. So I'm thinking of doing some leaves. So I'm just going to do a series of leaves, so 3 leaves. The kind of leaf I'm doing is just going to be this shape. So just the leaf, a leaf shape, and then just the lines that go either side, like so. Okay? So we'll do the first one. Actually, I'm going to turn this over this way. So I'm going to do the first one. Actually, let me just do the outline because it's nice to have just something that you can guide you, especially because the wax itself is white. So I'm just going to do 3 leaves next to each other. Right, so you can't see it, but I can, so it's a good guide for me. So get the wax and just go over the lines. There we go. So that's the first one. You can see that, yeah? And it looks like I will have enough of the wax, and I'll just do the other 2. So this is a nice addition to, say, working with the fabrics. You can paint your own designs and create a batik type feel using some very straightforward supplies and get a really nice result. And it will be a nice unique result as well. And if you're using a finer brush, you'll get a more delicate detail. But I've been using this brush for years for all of my batik and wax resist pieces. Okay, so I've got my leaf design. I can move my wax out of the way now and turn off my candle so it can cool down, and it will reset, and it's there whenever I need it. And my brush will start to go hard, but that's what's expected, but it's reusable after when I go back in to use it. Okay, so we've got some of the wax has come right through the fabric. I guess I was applying a little bit more on the fabric this time round, but that is the look that we've got. Don't throw away any of these, because what you could potentially do with this one is where the wax has gathered, you could scrape off this wax and put it back into the wax that you was using. It's perfectly fine to use. So you can scrape it off the paper. You've now got a slightly resistant surface, and maybe we can even see what we can do with that. If we've got enough time at the end, we'll see what we can do with that. But we've got all of that wax I can scrape off. Nothing is going to go to waste. It's all going to be used in some shape or form. So I had done it on card, which makes it easier to scrape up. And it does leave interesting image on the paper. Right, so I'm going to do the first one. I'm going to do it on the same paper. We can still, and we'll just see what happens to it as we are applying the paint. Right, I've got my palette here, and as I say, I'm going to be using these distress stains, and the ones that I've got are Spice Marmalade, Crushed Olive, Vintage Photo, Broken China, Dusty Concord, and a peeled paint. Now, use what you have. If you're going to use an acrylic, say, just make sure you water it down to then go on the paint. Yeah, you don't want to just use it straight. So I'm just going to take some of these and add to my palette so that I get a little pool of the stain. Then I've got my brush, I'll use this one here. Then I've got my brush, it was in water, so I'm just going to pick up some of that and then apply it to one of the areas. Now it doesn't matter if I'm messy or if I you know, are very neat. The wax is going to resist, do what it needs to do, and then resist the paint from spilling over into the next surface. I can actually go on the space where I've painted and it's not going to go through. The only way it will go through is if I actually crush. I'm going to do half of it. I'm just going to crush it in my hand. So what's going to happen is those areas where I had added the wax, there's going to be cracks in it, so the paint will slip through. So look, like here, we've got the paint slipping through. If the seal, so just like I'd said, when you're adding it to the fabric, if it goes all the way through, you're not going to get any spillage into another section. So like in this section here, let me come in, you'll see where there wasn't like the wax didn't go straight through the fabric to provide that seal, but here there were gaps, and so wherever there's gaps you're going to get seepage. So like on this section here, I'm going to get seepage. And what you can do, if you're thinking to yourself, actually no, I don't want that, get your brush again. If your wax is still soft, just get your brush again. I'm just going to move this out of the way for a minute and bring this back in. So if you say to yourself, in all the areas where it hasn't quite sunken in, I'm going to add some more wax, you can do that. The only other thing you need to be mindful of is that if you hadn't have done that first off, you're just laying wax on top of wax. So just like I've done here, I've now got an extra layer of wax, but it still hasn't come through. So just stick with how it is, with how you've got it so far, and let's keep going with this, and we'll see how much more seeps through. Okay, so I might do a kind of like pattern where I'll do the same thing on the other side, and it's nice to be able to use these stains, because I haven't used them in a long time. Okay, so we've used that one. So as I use them, I'm just going to put them to the side. I've just rinsed off the brush, and now going to add the next one. So we're not worried about any seepage or the travelling. Like this is travelling. I haven't yet done that side yet, but let's just see how we get on. Okay, I'm going to put some here like so. Okay, let's try this one. It's a very similar green, which I'm going to go up here. And if you want to dilute it a little bit further, just put your brush in some water. Okay. I've got some of the colours mixing in here, but that's fine. Use some more. It was purple that mixed slightly with the blue. Well, it's supposed to be purple, but it's coming out as if it's blue. Okay, let's turn it around. I'm not going to let any go to waste, so I'm just going to add wherever needs to be added in the space. I would like some red. I've got an orange here. Yeah, I'm going to put it at the top here. Ooh. And then I've got crushed olive. It's more like a browny colour. It doesn't look that much different from the orange. Okay, maybe use this ink. That's going to definitely spread. So I'm just going to put a drop of the ink and let's see. Yep. But that's fine. Oh my. Okay. So I had scrunched it up, and what I'm going to do is use it's a magenta. I'm just going to go around where the wax is, and if there are any gaps in it, it will seep in. You don't have to be, I'm not being like super kind of like it's got to stay on the line. If it goes over, it goes over. It will be just another interesting thing to have. So as you can see, I'm just going to go over. I really like it's where it's mixed with the green. I really like that. I'm going to bring it here. Just so. Okay. So. Oh, let me do the circles. Add a little bit of water. Okay, so I'm going to leave that like this. You could go on and on and on. But so that's what we've got to begin with. Okay, so we're going to leave this to dry, and this we're going to be coming back to this next week. The only thing you'll need next week is an iron, some printer paper, or some recycled paper, and that's what we're going to use to get rid of the wax. You might want a palette knife, because what you can do sometimes is scrape off the top layer, just like I did with the paper. You can reuse that wax, and then there's less wax to come off onto an iron that you don't use for your clothes. So if you've got a craft iron, but as long as you've got the paper, you can put the paper on top. And there's also uses for the paper, so that'll be in one of the art journaling videos that I will show you that. Let me just, there was a crack here I could see, so I'm gonna add that there. Okay, so let's work on the other one. And here we have the leaves. Now, I've got lots of greens to work with. Oh, I was going to use the watercolour, wasn't I? Let's see. It should be fine, you know, because you're just, it's colouring the fabric and it's resisting the fabric. So I'm going to put in some of my colours, I'm thinking green. So I'm just adding a bit of water there to those. There's a blue I like. and maybe a yellow. Okay, so I'm going to use the yellow first, and I'm just going to come on the outside here. I really need to water that down a bit, don't I? But as you can see, it will stain the fabric nicely. So let me just put that on this palette here. So we've got a good amount there. And I'm just going to come round the outside of these two. So most paints, if you water it down, it will stain, and it should give you a reasonable result. You know, see what other things that you have. Most paints will, we can tell by the clothes that we have, most paints will stain up our clothes. So I want to use the blue as well. I've got some here, so I can just add a bit more water to this. It doesn't need to be really dark, it's just really staining the fabric like so. And then once we iron it, it should stay. But these small pieces, you know, I'm not going to be washing them, so you would then have to check yours and the paints that you're using and see if that will happen with them. If you're using like straight fabric paint, then you could rewash them without any issues at all. But always read the instructions on the label or the bottle. Okay, so I'm going to try this pink, and I can potentially have different colour flowers if I want. So this particular fabric paint, it's the soft fabric paint, which means that when it dries, the fabric retains its texture, it doesn't harden. So I'm just adding additional water to that, and I'm going around the outside just in case there were some cracks, but I want to I've watered it down quite a bit, and I'm just going to go and paint this leaf here. Okay, so that's that, and then I want to go back with my watercolours and use the greens that I've got there in these leaves here. Now you really don't have to do too much in the sense of the colouring in, because you know, if you're going to be stitching them as well, then you really just want to add the colour, and then you're going to be adding further stitching, different sewing techniques, different stitches. But this is essentially how I worked on the piece that I'm working on this month. I'll show you what I've got next week. When we look at doing some stitching on there, I'll show you it, and we're going to be taking off the wax. Okay. Woohoo! So that's that one. And that's this one. So I'm gonna hang around for a few more minutes, and if you've got any burning questions that you need me to answer now's the time to do it. And if not, I will be fielding questions in the comments section, and I can go over exactly what we've done up to this point. And if you're still working on your pieces, then that's fine, you know, just take your time. If after we finish you've got questions, you know, again, leave them in the comment section. I will be coming back and I will answer all the questions. So we've got our fabric. We've had our fabric, which was 6.5 by 7 inches. And this is just a light fabric. It's a like a curtain liner. It's very light. And I've taken the wax. This was taken from a candle. It was broken up and into smaller pieces and used in an burner. You see how it's now gone solid. So it's used in an oil burner. This is a small one. You can pick it up in the dollar store. They're very cheap, very economical, very cheap. And the tea lights as well. I take out the tea light and use this as just if you've got different colors, or you know, you just need a small amount and you didn't want to do it in there, you can do it in the tea light, put the tea light in the top, and this will melt, and so you can keep it contained. For this one, once it's all nice and cold, when I come back to it, I can take this out if I want, but I'm going to leave this in and just cover it so that for the next one that I do, it's already ready to go. But you know, the tea lights, they last for about 4 hours, and you're never going to be 4 hours kind of applying wax to the surface of a piece of fabric. So I've initially used, on this one, I've used the Distress Stains. They are for porous surfaces. I'm not going to be washing these, but once I've added the iron, from the heat from the iron, it should set everything. And then I will go in and we will stitch. We'll do some stitching next week. We can look at that. So I've used Distress Stains on this one, and I had a printer ink. It was just the version. It's not like, you know, any named brand, but I had loads of them left over, and so I use them in dyeing fabric, and they do travel. It does kind of move depending on the fabric. And I said where the wax has gone all the way through, you won't get that travelling unless, of course, you've scrunched it to actually get some cracks in the piece. And then I've just added the inks, the stains, as I felt. And just, you know, you can complement this with colours from the threads that you use, or you know, you might want to add some additional painting, but that's, you know, entirely up to you. Okay, so for the second piece, we've used the soft fabric paint, and I wanted just to show you, you know, if you use different supplies, you know, you could potentially use what you have. If you've got Derwent, the ink tents, that's good on fabrics. A lot of these different art supplies are fine on fabrics. And I've used watercolours, and so on the outside I've used the watercolours, and on the leaves, and then for the middle leaf I've used the soft fabric paint, which retains the texture, so it will stay soft when we stitch. I'm not sure about the, yeah, the watercolour should be the same. Okay, so they're the two. You need to let them dry, and let them dry naturally. There's no point in rushing. And what you could do, if you've still got the wax, you could maybe play around with some additional designs. I might play around with some additional designs. But what we're going to do next week is remove the wax and then look at stitching and how I would approach some of the stitching, just like I'm doing now in the project. So I'm going to leave that there. If there are any more questions, you've got about a minute, and we can, you know, yeah, take it to wherever you want to take it, because then these can be added to projects. It can be a small mini project in itself. You can do some really nice things with these smaller pieces, and then, you know, with the larger pieces you can, you know, make some larger wall hangings but incorporate your own painting and designs in there. Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed that. Please do come back next week and see the next stage, and I look forward to seeing what you get up to. Okay, take care.